to Nagorno-Karabakh, Alex.
Yes, this time we're going to keep it even shorter, but we wish to focus on the humanitarian tragedy. Most particularly, what has gone on is that people have decided, and in this region, of course, people are poor farmers, and they usually have only one petrol or, to the Americans, gas-powered car to go on. They've had to queue for their fuel. There's been a horrible gas explosion and disfiguring burns of many. They've been airlifted or transported by road to Armenia after hours of delay. Precious time in medical treatment was lost because of the Azeri blockades, and it's often argued also Russian peacekeepers' incompetence by some. That's very much open to question. But we will see now a brief segment by Deutsche Welle's German service, the equivalent of BBC World for Germany, talking about the convoys of people leaving because they fear being forced to become citizens or worse, torture and dishonor if they stay. So Deutsche Welle is going into detail for just a couple of minutes on that, then we'll have Gevorg back.
Armenia says around 3,000 refugees have crossed its border from the disputed region of Nagorno-Karabakh. Fears are growing for ethnic Armenians there since Azerbaijan retook control of the enclave last week. Many of the refugees are crossing into Armenia in cars and buses at Kornizor. DW reporters Maria Katamadze and Jennifer Palka have filed this report from the Armenian border village.
Packed cars stream out of Nagorno-Karabakh as hundreds of ethnic Armenians flee their homes. Some vehicles bear the scars of the recent conflict. Aid groups are on hand to help as families cross the border into Armenia. The mass exodus sparked by fears for their fate under new Azerbaijani rule.
Today we left. They told us either you leave or take Azerbaijani passport. We are not the kind of people who take up Azerbaijani passports.
Azerbaijan retook Nagorno-Karabakh by force last week. The region sits within its borders, but had previously been under the control of ethnic Armenian forces. Around 120,000 Armenians live in the mountainous territory. Many fear persecution if they stay. That's despite Azerbaijan's promises that it wants to reintegrate them as equal citizens. Space for 40,000 people from Karabakh has been prepared in Armenia. Families standing by for their loved ones' arrival face a nervous wait.
Just before we bring Gevorg on, the map will show just the complexity. The right-hand map here indicates what is in lurid green is what Azerbaijan retook a couple of years ago. The pinkish colour is the separatist part of Nagorno-Karabakh, which continued to rule itself as an ethnic Armenian territory, which may insist yet now that it has a case in international law to declare independence at some point because of the persecution. But that's for the future. Right now, the exodus is to the southwest of that area. You can see Lachin, and just southwest of that, the border village of Kornizor, which is far as I've got in the region. If you follow the road, you will see Goris, the nearest town. I understand the hotels are fully booked with regular people, so that the bedraggled refugees are really quite in a poor way and having to be cared for by the locals of Goris more than the Armenian military when they get to Goris. Gevorg, please update us on this just as briefly as you can, the humanitarian situation as it's being told to people you know in and around Goris.
Well, since I'm in constant contact with the people there in Kornizor and we're providing aid to the refugees coming into Armenia, we're aware that almost 60,000 people have crossed that border to this moment. Overall, it is estimated that Nagorno-Karabakh area had 110,000 Armenian people living in that territory. So at least 60,000 have now crossed into Armenia, and we're waiting for more people to come in. These people are being dispersed throughout the whole territory of Armenia. They're getting initial aid at Kornizor and Goris, and that is by the Armenian populace and the Armenian government. Yesterday, there were several statements by a number of European and transatlantic countries stating that there will be assistance provided to those people from the international partners. And there's several statements that Russia's made in regard to that, but all the Russian aid was that they protested against the way the government in Armenia is handling this case with the Russians, rather than just saying that they will or will not provide any support to these people, or even express condolences, let alone of course take some of the responsibility for what their troops have done in that area.
And we'll just in passing show the light blue areas north and south of the Lachin corridor, as well as the area around Agdam to the right of Ashkeran there. If I'm not mistaken, Georg, these were the areas directly controlled by the Russian peacekeepers are arranged in November 2020, correct?
Everything in pink on the right-hand map was controlled by the Russians. And the Russians have started to gradually submit all of the key points to the Azeris as of
the
6
commanding
months.
heights, as it were.
Well, the commanding heights and the Lachin corridor. The Lachin corridor was submitted 9 months ago, and the whole region was in a blockade, short of food, short of electricity, short of gas. Basically, all the substance for people was cut by the Azeris with the Russians' consent. Then what they've done, they've kept the people hungry and cold and without any aid, medical aid, and so forth for 9 months. And then after the 9 months, the shellings begin, the Azeris come in, the Russians move out. They didn't do anything at all. There was only one small group of the Russian peacekeepers who have disobeyed the orders that they had, and they've gone into the place, to the village where the massacres were happening. That's in the area of Taravart village in Nagorno-Karabakh. They took the footage of everything that's been going on, and the Azeris detained these Russian peacekeepers, these several people, and upon holding them in custody for several hours, they released them only to murder them just an hour after their drive into the city of Stepanakert, the capital of Karabakh, began. So basically, they've released those Russians. They've let them have their phones with them with all the footage, but they've murdered them all the way on the way. And then the next day, Aliyev says, "I'm very sorry, Putin. We've killed them by accident." However, this was no accident whatsoever, and these people, they were the heroes that represent the true nature of humanity in the best possible terms, as this could be perceived by the Armenians and by any international observers that know about the situation.
And we'll be going into more detail about this in extra time. I can imagine viewers are quite befuddled by all the detail here and horrified. So stick around for extra time. We also have one more brief segment on Armenia in the main news.
Okay, thank you, Alex. And let's just